Fans call him Jan Ullrich, although he goes by Ulrich. Ulle is often regarded as one of cycling's most divisive figures. He won the 1997 Tour de France with a memorable effort on stage 9 in Ordino Arcalis, Andorra, and became a national hero in the process. The final days of climbing legend Jan Ullrich are chronicled here. Curious as to what went down? Today on Cycling Right Now, we'll have additional information about cycling tales, British cycling, road cycling, and more road cycling transfer news and whatnot. Let's begin. Even with the help of his teammates, every team captain may consider it a career highlight to have won the Tour de France at some point in their careers. How was it possible for Jan Ullrich to win the Tour de France while he was riding as a domestique for himself? It was a confluence of factors, including extraordinary skill, consistent effort, and being at the right place at the right time. Rivalries between two great riders who are contending for the crown are typical throughout the Tour de France. Bartali and Coppi, as well as Hinault and Le Monde, are prime instances of this. It's a very unusual occurrence for a rivalry of such a nature to develop inside a team. The modern teams that compete in the Tour de France often assign specific responsibilities to each of their riders, and Team Telecom in 1997 was no exception to this rule. Bjarne Riis, who was the head of the squad and the reigning champion from 1996, was the only one who was gunning for the win in the general classification. The other cyclists on the squad were giving him their full support throughout this endeavour. And foremost among them was the super domestique rider Jan Ullrich, who was the most crucial rider in Riis's team to help him win his second title. Ullrich was particularly devoted in the interviews he gave before the race, saying things like, "Bjarne is our captain. It's entirely focused on him. We are going to win another title with him." However, he could not resist the need to add, if something happened to Bjarne, things may change. Riis was 10 years younger than Ullrich, and he showed a remarkable amount of skill. It was obvious that he would be a strong candidate for the Tour de France title in the future. Even the director of Team Telecom, Walter Godfrut, had a difficult time determining who should be leading the team into the 1997 Tour of the United States as the captain. However, Team Telecom was not the only team that had potentially lethal competitors. Richard Virenque of France, riding for Festina Lotus, Marco Pantani of Italy, riding for Mercatone Uno, and Abraham Olano of Spain, riding for Benesto, were all successful in bringing the Tour de France championship back to their respective countries, and not a single one of them had to contend with a rival on the same squad as them. The friction that existed throughout the crew was readily apparent from the very beginning stage. A collision involving many riders 11 kilometers from the finish line split up the pack. Ullrich maintained his position in the first group, while Riis dropped to the second group, which was 1 minute behind the first. The entire Telecom team waited for the reigning champion so that they might assist him in having a great finish to the race. Ullrich was the lone person who was not included. The director of the team has permitted him to maintain his position on the pioneering group. Riis was unhappy with the conclusion that was reached. Both riders maintained cordial relations with one another during the subsequent days up until they reached the Pyrenees. That was the point at which everything started to shift. After the entire day of hard riding, Stage 9's winner, Virenque, grabbed control of the race and attacked the last ascent to Val Loron Aizet. Riis was left behind, while Ullrich was able to respond to the situation. Ullrich's performance on the bike that day was so strong that it gave the impression that he could simply respond and pass Virenque. However, he has not been granted authorization at this time. Riis insisted that he was still in the lead even though he finished 30 seconds behind the other competitors. On the other hand, it seems like deeds were beginning to speak more clearly than words. The ascent to Arcalis, which was 32 kilometers long, served as a stage 10 finale. Riis started to feel sick and had to pull out of the race with around 8 kilometers to go. His commitment to the team overcame his individualism, and he encouraged his fellow player to seize the opportunity by saying, "If you feel strong, go." Jan Ullrich waited for a reply from the team director before continuing. Following Godfrut's response that "you are the leader now," Ullrich began his chase of the group. Pantani and Virenque were both great climbers, but soon after he came up with them, he left them in the dust. Ullrich crossed the finish line 1 full minute before anybody else. After suffering a loss of 3 minutes and 30 seconds, Riis was inconsolable. Ullrich shared his thoughts by saying, "I'm fatigued but thrilled." Riis acknowledged his loss, saying, "Jan was in a terrific form today, and it was obvious he had to attack. Maintaining possession of the yellow jersey is a priority for us. Only with the assistance of your team will you be able to win the Tour." The day saw the birth of a new star. Voila la patronne, stated a headline in L'Equipe. This is the person in charge. Merckx and Indurain came to the same conclusion and said, it's determined. The assertion was made by Hino that a new age of cycling is here. Ulrich is going to be on top for the next 7 or 8 years. The only one who was reluctant to applaud was Virenque. Ulrich maintained his dominant performance during stage 12's mountainous time trial. He overtook Virenque, who had started the race before he did, and stretched his advantage to 5 minutes and 42 seconds. The newspaper Bild referred to him as Germany's new Tour de France behemoth, and the country was rejoicing in full cyclomaniac fashion. In the 7 years since Germany was reunified, politicians have been unable to do what this young rider has done. The East and the West were brought together by his riding. The Alps were the sole obstacle that continued to stand in his way of winning the Tour de France. The subsequent stage was won by Marco Pantani, and it featured the illustrious climb of the Alpe d'Huez as its climax. He was able to knock out Ries, Virenque, and even Ulrich thanks to the support of the audience, and a string of unfortunate events carried over into the subsequent level. At the beginning of stage 14, Ulrich had a fall, and as a result, the leading group was able to get away from him. To get Ulrich back to the front of the race, the entire telecom squad, including Ries, who was playing the role of a domestique at this point, put in a lot of effort. With around 12 kilometers left to go, they were finally able to catch up with the lone stage leader Virenque. Both Ulrich and Virenque fought until the very end, with the Frenchman ultimately coming out on top to win the stage. After some time had passed, the German superstar offered his reflections, saying, "What Björn did for me today was great. I can never give him enough gratitude. He displayed a great deal of his character." Ulrich was out in front by 6.5 minutes and appeared that the only thing that could catch up to him was himself. That is precisely what began to take place. In his final days, Ulrich was fighting off a cold in addition to his growing weariness. After stage 17, he was given a surprise visit from his mother and fiancée, which gave him the energy to continue the fight. And it was successful. Even in the last time trial, he was able to increase his lead and come out on top of Virenque once more, since Fignon won the race in 1984 by a margin of 10 minutes. Ulrich's victory margin of 9 minutes and 9 seconds is the largest since then. After the war, he also became the champion at the youngest age. I finished in second place in the Tour de France the year before, but nobody, not even my postman, knew who I was. After returning to my own country, Ulrich remarked that now ladies are throwing themselves at me. This concludes our discussion of today's video. We're confident that you'll find the video's content useful. Feel free to share your thoughts about the cyclist in the space provided below. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Click the bell to subscribe to this channel and receive notifications whenever there is an update. Thanks for watching.